Okay, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Hope. And thank you, everybody, council being here, and also thank you, members of the public, for this rather important committee of the whole that we're having. So this is the revised agenda for the committee of the whole meeting, the Snug Cove Wastewater Treatment Plant update and next steps. Opening of declare the meeting open, and we acknowledge with gratitude that we live and work on the traditional unceded territory of the Squamish Nation, whose people have been stewards of these lands and waters surrounding Naklalaquam, Bowen Island for millenniums. The first operation is the approval of the agenda. Does anybody have anything that they have any issues with that? I don't see anything. Late items, Hope, we had one copy of the late items. Is that going to cover it?
Yeah, there's just 2 letters that were sent in today.
Okay, thank you. And I will approve the agenda by consensus. We'll move on to public comments, and we have how many registered, Hope?
At the moment, we have 7.
Okay, 7. So you can go ahead with the list, and since we've designated 15 minutes in there, try to keep them fairly short. I'd like to see about between 2 and 3 minutes if you can make them manage that. Thank you. And Hope, who we got?
First is Amy Adams.
Amy Adams, welcome aboard, and go ahead anytime.
Hello, Mayor and Council. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today. I wonder if I might be able to adjust my timing to the end of the list so that my clients can speak first. And if there's any blanks that need to be filled in, I can chime in if needed.
You can certainly do that. Absolutely. Hope, next.
Okay, next is Robert Clayton.
Okay, Rob, go ahead.
And then that little button and start video.
Hey, can you guys see me?
Not quite yet. I got to go to page 2 here, but go ahead. Thank you.
Video issues.
Stop video and then start video.
I'm just gonna stop video and start video again here. Oh, hey guys. All right, so just gonna pull up my sheet. Cool. All right, okay, getting right into it here. Hey, Mayor Gary, Council, thanks for taking the time to let me speak. Some of you might know me. I'm Robby, my wife Karis. We both grew up here, and we recently had a baby girl. Her name is Brooke. As you may know, we bought 873 Rivendell Drive, one of the vacant service lots on Kate's Hill. The issue we've come to talk about is the hardship that the decision to deny my access to the sewer has caused us. I'm not sure if you're aware, but the connection fee is already paid for my place up there, and the 2 houses next to me have already been permitted to connect to the sewer. If you've visited the new lots at Rivendell Heights, you'll know it's not straightforward to build a field here. I've had a quick ballpark estimate in excess of $60,000 to put a septic system at my property, money that was obviously not in my build budget. I feel it's unreasonable to expect me to have to pay for this. Another thing is we don't have time to wait and figure it out. We have all of our financing and trades lined up and paid deposits to start this build in March. If we don't confirm we're going ahead by the end of the month, we'll lose our builder. And you probably know how hard it is to find a builder on Bowen these days. Also think about the trades that will be scrambling to look for work if the build is canceled. There's also rent to consider, costing us just over $3,000 a month. That eats into our build budget. Rent here is no guarantee. Our place could be listed for sale anytime. We had no warning of this potential overcapacity scenario. Our building permit application was accepted before Christmas, and we were issued a building permit number at that time. I should not be liable to pay for any problems that have happened with the sewer system. Again, the connection fee has already been paid at my property. I find it very hard to accept that you will deny us connection. I have invested my life savings in this project. I ask that Mayor and Council support me and the other building permits affected and let us join sewer. I ask that Mayor and Council, who in good faith, are trusted to protect people like me from suffering unnecessary hardship and to stand up for their community members. Would it be impossible to find a solution for us who are immediately affected? As I mentioned earlier, I'm scheduled to start building in March and don't have time to figure out what to do here. Thanks for hearing me out. I hope you can understand what this means for me. That's all. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Robert. I'm hearing
Next-
what you're saying.
Next, we have Bruce Macdonald.
Bruce, welcome.
I've not seen him join yet, so why don't we just skip
Yeah,
to
we'll
the
just give him
next?
the pass for now. Catch up
Okay.
later.
Mike Milway.
Okay, Mike. See you there. Go ahead. Oh, there's Bruce.
Sorry, we're we're kind of not very.
If it doesn't have a gear shift, I can't drive it, Gary. Or Mayor, sorry.
Okay, who we got on here? We got Mike here too? Hope?
Mike is here, but I don't see him popping up. So why don't we let Bruce and
Okay.
Maggie go?
Go ahead, Bruce and Maggie.
Afternoon, Mayor and Council. Thank you for giving me the minute to talk to you here. I'm just voicing my opinion on what I think could hopefully be an easy solution for everybody here. If everyone just kind of gets together and thinks about the system that was designed for Bowen Island back in 2001 and upgraded in 2011. I'm just trying to figure out where the disconnect came from then to now. And hopefully we get some answers today with the information we're going to learn from this meeting. So I trust everyone in the municipality to do their best to help everybody out, and I'm sure we'll all come through this smiling like a happy island. That's all I'm going to say. I'm just going to keep it short until I hear what's happening with the system.
Okay, thank you, Bruce. Yeah, we're all in this together, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Some of us not quite as deep.
Yeah.
Okay, Hope.
We have Mike Milway.
Okay. Mike,
Maybe
go
you
ahead.
can hear me. I'm trying to turn on my video, but it does not start.
We can certainly hear you, Mike. Thank you.
Okay, here, I think somebody just allowed me to do that. So
Very good.
thank you, council members, for giving me the opportunity to voice objection to the proposed bylaw amendment. My name is Mike Milway, owner of a piece of property on Rivendell Drive with my wife, Katie. We purchased that piece of property with an understanding that it had access to water and sewage. We borrowed money to do so. This will be our retirement home. My wife's family has been on Bowen Island for 50 years, 30 of those years as permanent residents, and we want to retire on Bowen. We paid a Bowen Island architect to create blueprints for our dream home. We scheduled a Bowen Island builder to start building it. We submitted our building application in December. And then on January 11th, one day after your meeting, we were informed that our building application was denied because, well, you know the reason. Your decision caught everyone by surprise. The people who developed the land and sold it to us, the two women who designed it and finalized the blueprints, the builder who was looking forward to starting. There weren't public announcements that prepared us for this at all. So I think you probably appreciate not only the scope of our frustration, but also, wow, the timing of it. We are invested, we are financed, many of us, and between now and a proposed solution, there will be ramifications of that. There were two notes in meetings, in the meeting from January 10th that concerned me. The first was that in the recommendation to you, staff said that there are no financial implications to this report. I find that a little bit hard to believe. Certainly you're hearing about financial implications today. I think just the tax revenue issue as undeveloped properties that could be developed really soon, bringing in more tax revenue. There are probably financial implications for the municipality and the risk of and the liability to class action suits. I find that just shocking. But then under other considerations, there was this note about the legal side of this. Staff have had a draft bylaw of 560 reviewed by legal counsel. Refusal to issue a building occupancy permit for projects may have legal implications for the municipality. Depending on the stage of development a project has achieved. From your notes, the more notice that is given before such a refusal, the lower the municipality's potential liability. I imagine that meant financial implications. And that's what I found strange. Like other people, we had a building permit submitted in December, and then a proposed bylaw in January that hasn't yet passed was reason to reject it. That just seems like kind of a post-factum argument to me. If we said, let's make a bylaw that makes it illegal and people who fish in Deep Bay will be fined, and let's propose that and say in a couple of months it might pass, it just seems unethical to say, let's go back and fine people who are fishing in December. So thank you for listening to my comments. I may have a couple of questions at the end, but thank you for serving the community too and listening to us.
Thank you very much, Mike. Appreciate what you're saying.
Mary Ann Smith.
Mary Ann.
Don't see her here. So we'll just go to the next. Carla Skuce.
Thank you. Carla, welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Thanks for the opportunity to speak today and for listening to our comments. It would be pretty impossible for me to convey the amount of stress that we've been under for the past 2 weeks as a result of the decision to not grant building permits to anyone in the Snug Cove sewer area. So I'm not going to bother trying. I only have a few minutes, so I'll trust that you have all read my letter and have a good idea of the situation that we are in. And I'm going to use my time just to let you know where we're at and to tell you what I hope to get out of this meeting today. We've spent a lot of time weighing our options and decided that we are not in a position to wait this out. So interest rates are expected to rise rapidly this year, and our rental is unstable at best. So we are building a house, whether it's serviced by sewer or we have to install septic. We plan on being in our new home by the end of this year. We have an excavation permit on the way, and we're hoping to get site prep done before February 1st. The reason for the rush is that we are less than 1,000 meters from a nest tree and need to make sure we are complying with the heron nesting policy. If we need to blast in order to accommodate a septic tank, things are going to get a lot more complicated and it costs us more time and more money. So we need to know whether or not we're prepping for a septic tank or not. I realize that there are bigger issues at hand today, but I hope that you can keep in mind my family's situation when you're considering the bigger problem. The extra $50,000 it might cost me to install septic might seem like peanuts when we're talking about millions of dollars here, but I can assure you it's not peanuts to me. So what I'm asking for today is a timeline. What I really need to know is whether the upgrades are going to be done in time for us to hook up to sewer when we're done our build, or whether you are willing to make space for us if they're not. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carla. Lars? Hope?
Marcel Maes.
Marcel, go ahead.
Okay. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Yeah, welcome, Gary Ander, Mayor. Thank you for letting me speak. I'm a new person on Bowen Island. In October, we bought land on Elrond's Court, and we are preparing building plans And of course, we were also surprised about the new bylaw. And the reason that I participate is that I read the engineering report. That is a very good report, by the way. I tried to understand the figures behind it, and I just wanted to know for myself how much is the impact on the sewer of these developments. And in this report, they talk about short term and near term and 20 and 40 years. I consider we are all in the short term rainy season time frame. And I learned that basically at this moment, there are about 400 people on the Snug Cove sewer system. And in short term, there will be 484. So this is a growth of about 20%, what seems a lot as an increase. And by reading the figures, I learned that there's a great inflow of influx, rainwater and other stuff into the sewer. And basically the amount of sewer that actually comes from the house is just like maybe 30% of the total water that comes from basically from Case Hill. So I checked, and then finally at the end on page 26, I found out that if this is right, that the increase of the short-term development is only 4% on the wastewater capacity. What seemed a low number to me, but again, I'm not an expert. I also read that at the end, there was a conclusion that in 2020, there was an overcapacity. The capacity is maximum 227 cubic meter per day. And 2020, the capacity was 205. That means there was still 10% capacity. Let's say that the 4% is correct. That means that even on a rainy season in 2020, there would be enough capacity for the short-term development. So as I said, I'm not a civil engineer, so I'm wondering if this is correct. And if it's just 4%, if you can somehow mitigate the risk or use backup measures to let us continue to build on in our case on Case Hill. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Marcel, and hopefully by the end of today's committee of the whole, you'll have more clearer understanding of our position and where we're at with the water system. But thank you for your comments.
Yeah, thank you. Also, I forgot to switch on my video, but this is
okay. Oh, there you go. Thanks. Hope.
We're gonna circle back to Amy Adams.
Okay, Amy, welcome.
Hello again, and thank you again for time to comment. I'm mostly just here to support my clients who have been really affected. You know, I design houses and try to work with the municipality as best I can and build relationships and just help this community grow. So I think we're all really interested to hear what Mr. Graham has to say. And, I'll chime in with a couple of questions later, but thank you for listening to everybody. And, this situation has very severely impacted, a few people here that they could, lose it all. So anyways, thank you very much.
Thank you, Amy. And yes, we understand what an egregious situation this is. It's a little overwhelming. And anyway, we'll carry on with the meeting and hopefully people get a better understanding of it and where we are and what the future looks like. Okay, so going to move on to staff reports.
Gary,
Yeah.
Miranda.
Yeah.
Several of the people that have spoken have said that they would pop in with questions or ask for information later on. Are we going to be allowing comments from the public during the committee of the whole, or should they be asking their questions now as part of the public comment period?
We also have the question period at the end of the meeting. Councilor
I don't
Lars.
mind the question period at the end of the meeting if as we go through this, if people can hold their questions till the end of the meeting. I think that would be more, because we'll get off track pretty easy here. That's going to be quite a comprehensive.
I wasn't thinking about answering their questions now. I was thinking about just having them on the table. So we knew, so the presenters knew what they were, and then they could answer them during their presentation.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm thinking that there's going to be quite a few questions out there. And
okay.
I think it might just go on to confuse the
all right.
the reporters here. So I'll go to staff reports, and then it's the Snug Cove wastewater treatment plant upgrades, update and next steps. Patrick Graham, Director of Engineering, dated January 21, 2022. All right, Patrick, over to you. And like I said, for those in the public domain there, if you have questions as Patrick goes through them, try to just write them down, and we'll go to it at the end of the presentation. Thank you.
Okay. Hi, everybody. And I'm hearing everybody's comments. I mean, it's not a situation we like to be in. We like to provide the service that everybody expects, and unfortunately, we're in a situation here with level of development that has occurred exceeding the capacity of the infrastructure to deal with it. The Snug Cove sewer collection system, the area we're talking about, there's the catchment area along Bowen Island Trunk Road, the commercial strip that drains to a pump station, and then up to the plant. There's the gravity system that drains off Cates Hill. And then there was the fairly newly added pump station extending the system out to Miller Road. All of that drains to the wastewater treatment plant. And it's the wastewater treatment plant itself where we have the capacity issues. So we have been working with Urban Systems, and we have two of the we have the Urban Systems engineers who've been helping us with this on the call to help with some of the more detailed questions. There was a detailed capacity assessment towards the end of 2020, and then further monitoring and assessment occurred and was summarized in 2021. That was included with the information in this report. Generally, the conclusion didn't change. That is that the plant is at capacity and in urgent need of upgrades. And I should point out that this is confirmed by operational experience. There's been a lot of discussion about various numbers and assumptions in the reports. We do see flow coming to the plant that exceeds its capacity. We've had situations where the operator hasn't been able to get enough flow through the plant, and it's backed up at the head of the plant and essentially overflows and ponds at the site in an effort to try and put more of the wastewater flow through. The risk there is that the biomass in the bioreactors, which are the main treatment processes, rises up over the level of the weirs, and then you have discharge to your outfall. That's not clear. That's exceeds the limit of what our permit to discharge allows us to do. So both of these things have occurred, and they do coincide with high rainfall. So we're part of our plan in addressing this is to try and reduce that as much as we can. I'll get into that in a little more detail. But the main point there is that it's not academic. I mean, the plant is over capacity. We don't have inflow monitoring. That was one of the improvements that is recommended as part of the phase 1 upgrades. We only have effluent monitoring currently. We have exceeded our permit limit once, and more recently in 2020, it was close to that limit. I should point out that if we've got overflow and ponding at the head of the plant, that's not going to get picked up by the effluent monitor, but it does contravene our permit. The only place we're allowed to discharge wastewater is the outfall. There are provincial and federal legislation where If you're exceeding certain limits, you have to register under those acts and under those regulations. And we will need to do that. The BC municipal wastewater regulation registration in particular can be a very lengthy process, can take a couple of years. And there are some redundancy requirements that come into play with that regulation. There's also the federal wastewater system effluent regulation that we have to register under that. But these are regulations. The main thing, though, is relating to the plant itself not having the capacity to deal with the flows that we're seeing during some of the high rainfall events. The other concern is just since we've been doing this and looking into this, there's been significant development ongoing. Looking ahead, so we've had units developed on Foxglove and Rivendell, as well as the apartment building, which is now at about 2/3 occupancy. There was a prior capacity assessment in 2017 when the proposal to develop the distillery came forward. Unfortunately, there was some incorrect information about the population that the current treatment plant can accommodate in that report. That's perhaps led to some decisions that maybe shouldn't have been made. Just to quickly go through a timeline. So original wastewater treatment plant is constructed in 2001 and then expanded in 2011. And then in the 2015 to 2020 period, there was a lot of development that was approved through development permits and subdivision approvals. So including the Foxglove and Snug Cove House, the pub, the apartment building, the distillery, and then Rivendell, and then the subdivision of the community lands, the fire hall, medical center, and in a future additional apartment housing on the Birch site. So shortly after I started working here, one of the things that's sort of was striking is all of this development happening and without really a plan for upgrading the plant. That was one of the first things we brought to council was getting their approval to hire Urban Systems to look at a scoping study for wastewater treatment plant upgrades, and that would include a more detailed capacity assessment. So that's they were working on that. We were working on that with them in 2020, and there was a report to council, committee of the whole, same format as this, on in October. Essentially providing the results of that capacity assessment and scoping study, indicating that we were at capacity and we needed to get on with at least the preliminary design, the next steps in the design process for expanding and upgrading the plant. So shortly after that, in December 2020, we got council approval to proceed immediately with the next steps towards that. So with the preliminary design and the related environmental studies, and that we would budget for that in the 2021 capital renewal and replacement budget for essentially the municipal budget. So we proceeded to a request for proposals process, and in March of 2021 we had council approval to award the RFP to Urban Systems to proceed with the pre-design for the wastewater treatment plant upgrades. And then as we moved through that process, we obtained some cost estimates and some ideas and recommendations about phasing of the upgrades, and we got some approval from our CAO and CFO, and the CAO did speak to council about proceeding immediately with the detailed design for the phase 1 upgrades. And recognizing the urgency, that's what we've been focused on, is getting a solution in place as quickly as possible. And then we can't add load to a wastewater treatment plant that's over capacity and we're already contravening the provincial legislation in its operation. So that's where the moratorium on new building permits until the upgrades occur comes from. So in terms of the short-term development, we recognize that the development that's further advanced in their process, we want to be able to accommodate those as soon as we can. So there are the 5 houses on Rivendell that have submitted applications for building permits. Some have looked at septic systems. Other active building permits include the medical center and the community center. And both of these projects do have feasible septic system options, which they may proceed with. But it's not just those lots. There's also there's 5 remaining duplex lots on Foxglove. There's 4 vacant lots on Elrond's Court, and there's 1 vacant lot on Rivendell that haven't applied for permits. And and there's other potential development that would be allowed under current zoning in the sewer collection area. So this is what we're focused on trying to accommodate. Just looking at the existing wastewater treatment plant site, and what's proposed for phase 1 upgrade. So currently, because of the flows exceeding capacity, one of the bioreactors needs to be kept offline as emergency or as equalization storage. So when you have daily flows that are too high for the system to accommodate, there needs to be somewhere for it to go, so that it doesn't overflow, or to limit the amount of overflow. There's not enough equalization storage currently. The phase 1 upgrades would be to add offline equalization storage for peak flows, to at least enable the plant to run at full capacity and accommodate the immediate, at least the immediate, really to accommodate the growth that's already happened. That's a key point, that we've built beyond the capacity of the plant already. So that needs to be accommodated, along with these properties that have gone down the road of developing their dream homes, and it's not fair to them to that we don't have the capacity to accommodate them. So we want to accommodate those properties as well. Retaining the existing infrastructure to the extent possible and minimizing costs. It's just in terms of the proposed new infrastructure, that there's a new tank and valve chamber. It's really only about 25% of the cost. There's also aeration mixing for the tank that's needed. There's transfer pumps, control valves and flow meters, and the process piping, electrical and controls upgrades, and the recommended influent flow meter site works. So the Class D cost estimate we have is 1.64 million, including the design, which is underway. We got that underway in November. We're also looking at project delivery options, and looking at a construction management approach that would hopefully allow us to reduce that, to do this upgrade more efficiently and cost effectively. Just showing here, this is proposed a new equalization tank that would be, this is the influent pump station to the bioreactors. Peak flows that exceed the capacity of the system would be taken to offline storage. There is an existing tank that we'd use as well, but it's not enough for to provide the capacity that we need. And then that gets fed back into the system from the equalization storage when the flows coming in allow for that to happen. So that's really phase one is just what's already been done and in progress, right? And then phase two upgrades, really looking at expansion of the plant capacity to accommodate the projected 20-year growth. And then we're looking at two new bioreactors, including the blowers, clarifiers, and feed pumps, and aeration, process piping, and all the related mechanical and electrical infrastructure. We would need to expand the blower and controls building. A new influent pump station would be required, and a new ocean outfall. It would be very challenging and possibly not even feasible to fit all of these upgrades on the existing site. And so that's something that we'd be looking at. We've been discussing with Metro Vancouver about getting at least a small amount of the adjacent park to help us with that. It's a substantially higher cost. The estimated Class D estimate is 5.8 million. It doesn't include any land acquisition costs. So this is, again, there's two new bioreactors. We would need to upgrade the inflow, the screens, and a new influent pump station. So that's the phased approach, whereby we can hopefully relatively quickly get approval to proceed with phase one and deal with essentially the immediate crisis, and then move on to the next phase of upgrades to be able to accommodate the growth that we expect. So just a little bit on inflow and infiltration. So all sewer collection systems have infiltration and inflow component to the flow. Snug Cove sewer system is it is slightly higher than the typical target, but it's not out of whack from what it is similar to what you see in other systems. We are staff have been trying to identify and reduce inflow and infiltration sources on an ongoing basis. There was a significant inflow source on Gates Hill that was diverted and addressed in 2019. This past year, we completed the upgrades to the Snug Cove pump station, which addressed another significant infiltration source. We're currently working with a specialty firm to seal some manholes where there has been some leakage identified. It's not major, but it's worth, given the challenges that we're having with capacity, it's definitely worth doing whatever we can to reduce the inflow and infiltration. And so that's ongoing. The other aspect is related to demand management and moving forward on some of those initiatives, particularly around the reviewing the rate structure to encourage conservation, education as well. It's really only a partial solution. It's not going to. The wastewater treatment plant upgrades are still required, in addition to these I&I reduction efforts. In terms of financing, well, the main issue around this is that all this development has happened and the municipality has not collected contributions towards wastewater treatment plant upgrades, and so there's no dedicated funding source for it, and that's something that we're changing. Future development will be required to contribute the infrastructure that the infrastructure costs that are needed to support that development. So really, it's, you know, essentially the municipality hasn't collected contributions. It falls to the municipality to figure out where the funds are going to come from for, you know, at least the portion of the upgrades for that capacity that's, you know, already been given away, so to speak. So Liam has been working with the financial staff to identify where we could get, where we could reallocate non-statutory reserves, pull from the capital replacement and renewal fund, which may require some deferral of projects that we, you know, that we were really hoping to do, and then some from unappropriated surplus to at least fund the cost of phase one. And that's the main thing we're looking for from council is approval to get that work going. You know, the design is underway. You know, it could be constructed this year if we get the, you know, the financing and funding for it approved. And that's what we're hoping to do. Phase two upgrades is a bigger project. So again, like you'll see in the recommendations, we're asking for approval to at least move forward with the planning and design and permitting phase for the phase two upgrades. Estimated the cost of that are at $460,000. That amount could potentially be funded from non-appropriated surplus to advance essentially immediately in parallel with our advancing the construction of phase one. And then the financing for construction of the phase two upgrades, it's unknown at this time. You know, we'd like to meet with the development community and look at, you know, the long-term borrowing options, what sort of processes would be required around that. You know, this is very much a problem that we'd like to solve and is solvable. And in the near term, you know, some funding is required to do that. That's the end of the slideshow and summary. Maybe we go to questions from there.
Yeah, Patrick, okay. Yeah, just before we go, I think the important thing for the people that are standing by and in the room here is who's in phase one, who's in phase two. You know, what are we hoping to achieve by the phase one if we go ahead with the phase one modifications and that sort of thing, the upgrade, you know, who's going to be serviced by that? Do you have any feeling on that right now, or you or Liam, that where we're at on that?
So currently phase one is really only what's been already built or started. So even, and we're just working with urban systems now to try and understand if there's any way to at least accommodate the building permits that have been submitted already. You know, and through our efforts to reduce inflow and infiltration, can we create additional capacity to at least capture those? It doesn't include the vacant lots that haven't applied for permits. It doesn't include the medical center or the community center or anything in the future. You know, it's essentially just getting us out of a hole, unfortunately.
Okay, understood. Maureen?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Ander, and thank you, Patrick, for your overview. I guess I just wanted to say up front that I think all of us recognize how shocking some of this news has been, both for the folks immediately affected and for council. and that I'm really sorry that the news wasn't shared in a somewhat different way, and I hope that going forward we will handle it better. And I think all of council is probably with me on that. So I guess my questions, I have a whole lot of questions. I'm sure many other people have too, so I'm just going to pick a couple of them. One is with the health center, they have had the option of signing off on a covenant to proceed. So they were able to get their building permit, but they were not confirmed for their occupancy permit until such time as septic was in place or a sewer hookup was an option. The folks who are in the wings waiting on their building permits, is a covenant part of what you're envisioning might be an option for them?
Liam, do you want to take that on, or?
Sure.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Thanks, Councillor Nicholson, and thank you, Patrick, for that presentation. That was very helpful. As Patrick just said in response to the mayor's question, the existing phase 1 design doesn't look like it will have sufficient capacity to address those properties that had an application that was not yet approved. If we can determine that there could be sufficient capacity, and so we're digging into that question with the engineering consultants right now. If we can determine that there would be sufficient capacity to allow additional permits to be approved, then we may well want some level of agreement and understanding that, okay, you can go forward with your building project. However, we cannot issue an occupancy permit until we have certainty that capacity at the plant will be there. But we wouldn't be willing to issue any more building permits unless we were feeling extremely confident that we can secure that additional capacity. And in the ideal scenario, it would be a schedule that was lining up as well, so that the treatment plant improvements would line up with the completion of these additional projects.
Okay. My second question, and I'll keep it to two. My second question is that sort of out in the community is the argument that our flow is not exceeding capacity. So just very bluntly, could you respond to that? Where, for example, our former mayor is stating that capacity is around 90 odd, and we've got permission to 227. And he's saying there's plenty of capacity. So very simply, layperson's language, can you explain what's wrong with that viewpoint, if in fact it's wrong?
Well, I mean, the main problem with the numbers that you just threw out there, which you say come from the former mayor, he's talking about, a regulated capacity for peak discharge. And he's comparing that with an average daily flow of 90, and that's the same mistake that was made in the Kerwood-Lytle 2017 capacity assessment. They divided 240 cubic meters as the plant capacity by, an average daily flow per capita, and came up with 1,300 people that you can accommodate, which, of course you can't. So he's mixing up average day and peak day. But I mean, the main, I guess, if you want proof that, we're exceeding capacity, it's that, the operator, we have days of prolonged rain, which happens around here. The flow is coming to the plant can't get through the existing bioreactors without either causing a washout, which is the biosolids get too high and you have effluent that is not clear getting discharged, or it backs up and overflows at the head of the plant, or both. So, both of those things are contravening our permit to discharge with the province, and that it's clearly exceeding capacity of the plant. So that's what I said. That's why I was saying it's not academic. This is what we're seeing, on the ground, operationally. So I would caution against, I don't know where exactly this comes from, but pulling numbers out of a report like that and coming to these conclusions is, can be dangerous.
Okay, thank you, Patrick.
Thank you, Patrick and Maureen. On to you, David.
Thank you, Gary, and thank you, Patrick and Maureen. The questions, those were the ones, the 90 versus 227, and the ones I tried to understand as well. Patrick, one more just around this is that, so we had reports starting in late 2020 that we were in trouble, but we sort of assumed we could get through with what was immediately planned, what was sort of on the table, and this suddenly seems to have changed. So what new information has made this suddenly more critical that we had to stop everything? I mean, we've got the data that goes back, over several years, and I've looked at all that. What suddenly made it more critical? Sorry.
Well, I guess a few things. I mean, that there's a lot of this development was set in motion in prior years, like and that's been continuing, been carrying on. We hoped perhaps that we could, going back to the the end of 2020, where we flagged this with council as a major issue and advanced the got the approval to advance with the design. We were hopeful that we could add some equalization storage fairly quickly and inexpensively. As urban systems got into the design and eventually sort of towards, I think it was in October 2020 or 2021, provided some of the cost the Class D cost estimates and the recommended phasing approach. It became clear that while it's, adding this equalization storage isn't just a quick fix that we can do right away. It's a $1.7 million project that we need to figure out how we're going to pay for. And in the meantime, their building permits were being received. And then there's all these other lots that are, zoned for, could easily submit. And we heard from one of them today who was planning to submit a building permit. So, and then there's also the more recent capacity exceedance at, the operational evidence that I was talking about. All of those things were, I guess, cause for major concern, right? That we're not compliant now. We can't keep adding. We can't keep
Okay.
adding to the problem.
Thanks, Patrick. You answered my next question, which was because I had it in my head that this idea of an equalization tank was a fairly simple, comparatively simple thing to do, and that was sort of a quick fix. But I see that that was a mishap. That's not true. A little bit more about timing. So if we were to move forward as quickly as possible on this, would that work for the folks that have started their construction now? I mean, is that, and so, okay, they could get a building permit, but not get an occupancy permit till we had the capacity. But when would we have capacity if we started moving as quickly as possible?
Well, the capacity is, like I said, is for essentially stuff that's already been started. You know, the apartment building, the fire hall, projects that are under construction already on Rivendell and Foxglove, the library, which was needed for the fire hall. And so at this time, we weren't able, I was hoping before this meeting to be able to confirm that we can accommodate, you know, at least the building permit applications that have been submitted. I haven't been able to yet. I'm hopeful that we can. If that's the case, then, you know, this is a project that could be completed this year. It could be completed in 2022, the first phase of upgrades. So that would be, you know, probably towards the end of the year would be the soonest we could have phase 1 upgrades completed.
Okay, thanks, Patrick. I have questions about phase 2, but I'll leave those for later. I'll let other people ask questions now. Thank you.
Thank you, David. And over to Allison.
Thanks. A lot to comprehend, Patrick. Thank you. And I'm glad the urban systems people are with us. And so I guess if I'm that last comment about timing, when you say by the end of 2022, that would just be so we could actually get the apartments occupied and up and running. And so I think we've got about 5 building permit applications that basically we're not going to be able to issue. That's not going to be available for those people.
I can't confirm that at this time.
Okay. And I guess the people on Rivendell Drive, there's really no way that they can put in septic systems just because of the shape of the lot, correct? And that
I think there were 2 applicants who indicated they were pursuing septic options.
Well, I'm talking about the Rivendell ones, not the Elrond's Court one that Carla spoke to. She's got a big enough lot, but Rivendell ones, they just drop off into nothing. So
I'm also talking about Rivendell.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I guess having been around here since we started having attended rezoning applications meetings back in 98, 99 to do with the rezoning of the Kate's Hill lands. You know, and I went through all my binders of stuff. My office is a disaster. And every time we did one of these things, an expansion or looking at reports on the original sewer system, and the outfall was put in back in 1989, there was reports and everybody always said, you know, we had the capacity. Every time I, you know, voted for something, I was doing it on the basis of reports that indicated that we had the capacity, like the Towns for Tomorrow grant and the Build Canada Fund. We're going to double our capacity. And you read the application form, it was so that we could put in the civic community center and support the seniors housing complex and develop and sell the community lands. And you look at the Kate's Hill rezoning and the properties that were added, and reading the latecomers agreement, there was engineering studies done that supported that this capacity would enable the whole of Kate's Hill to be serviced, plus BC Ferries, plus Dallas Marina, plus the community school, and so forth. So please excuse me if I'm sounding a little skeptical or frustrated. One of the speakers, I really want to understand how we got to where we got to. And in reading everything, doing a little Googling on infiltration and stuff, it seems to me capacity, looking at the report from Dayton and Knight back in the beginning, they allowed, I think, 12% for infiltration. So how much of our actual capacity of running the plant is being taken up by things coming in that aren't from people's septic lines? That's my first question. I noticed there's a report referenced in 4.2 of the urban systems report, but I don't seem to have that, that talks about inflow and infiltration. Could we have a quick little 5 or 10 minute on sewer 101?
Yeah, we could, I think this is something I might want to get some assistance from Steve or Mary if you're on the line, in terms of how you estimated the I&I component. And also, I think it would be useful for people to hear how that compares with what is typical, is what you've typically seen in municipal sewer collection systems.
And I've got a couple of follow-up questions.
Okay, do we have Steve coming in, or Mary?
I think it's Mary, but she's muted.
Okay.
Hi.
Hi, Mary. Welcome, and thank you very much.
Oh, my pleasure. Steve, feel free to add anything as I go along here.
Okay.
So there's two components to I&I. First of all, even in dry weather, there's a base flow that's coming into your system. And we were able to tell that from a short-term influent monitoring that was done on the gravity sewer that's draining the whole dormant area, and also the Miller Road pump station area. So this is not the Snug Cove, but from the other part. So we were able to tell from there that there's a base amount of infiltration all the time, even in dry weather. And that's normal for sewer systems, and it's a small amount. So that's built in to the average per capita flow in dry weather that we're expecting in terms of sewage. The next thing that we look at, because it's not typically possible to actually measure the actual amount of I&I coming into a system versus sewers, but what we do have is the effluent flow records. And they tell us what the ratio is between the average flow in a year and the peak day that you saw in that year. And so that peak day includes your I&I. It also includes the natural variation in just the base sewage flow. So your sewage flow also has a peak. There's 3 different things that contribute to that kind of peak. One is the number of people. You guys get visitors in the summertime and they use the facilities. You also have people who leave the island and go work somewhere, and they use the facilities there. So all of these things, the number of people, if you have a look at the way the sewer flows look, actually, Patrick, it might be good if you have that, to put that up now.
Oh,
I can talk to that a little bit. You can see how your sewer flows.
All right, let me just share my.
Yeah. So the sewer, yeah, here's the sewer flows from, and you can see that one high number there in the past where you've passed your permit, which is 227. Your permit is actually less than the actual capacity of the plant, which is slightly higher. So getting back to the sewer flow. So it varies based on number of people. That's pretty easy to comprehend. It also varies based on the water use. When we come up with an average per capita flow for a sewer, that's the average amount, but nobody always uses the same amount every day. And if you have a whole bunch of people, sometimes those different usages average out over an average, and sometimes they add up and you get a resonance and you get a high point and a low point. So for example, if you look at these flows, you can see that there's variation, quite a bit of daily variation, even in the dry periods where you're not expecting a lot of rainfall. So that's variation due to different numbers of people and different people using the system. The third one is impact of rainfall. And when we actually put your flows against a curve of rainfall, you can see how it's responding. So that's the third one, and that's causing most of the higher peaks. And so all of those things add together, and trying to figure out exactly how much is the infiltration and inflow is not typically done unless you have a really big, obvious source that you can really get a good handle on how much water is coming from that source. Typically, infiltration inflow is coming from many smaller sources, and they all add up. So what you do is you've got your average sewer flow that you've calculated and come up with based on the growth that you're expecting to try and accommodate, and you peak that by historical peaking factor that you can see the high points here on this graph. And that comes up with your overall maximum day flow that you have to try and accommodate. Does that answer the question? Can I talk any more to that, or does that help?
Well, that helps. I mean, looking at we're going out across, so we've got all the years together in that graph, right? The blue line is the 2021.
Yeah, there's 4 different years of.
Yeah, and they're all, so it's by month, not by year. The blue line gets an awful lot bigger in September, October, November, and December.
Yes.
So
all of them do.
Yeah, they all do. But so
they all do, and so that is the effect of infiltration and inflow.
Okay. Yeah. So
also,
there is
you have changing populations as well.
Yeah, but we'd have traditionally, I mean, we don't have any visitors in the winter, you know, so by the end of September and into October, November, and December.
Yeah. And because we analyze that, I'm sorry, go ahead.
And because we haven't measured inflow, I mean, all our water connections are all metered, but has anybody compared the amount of water from the water meters to the outflow? Or yes, I mean, we haven't measured inflow, so you have to measure effluent outflow.
Yes.
I mean, just, you know, if we're
yes,
we average house is using 150 gallons a day.
Yeah. We did look at that, but we did try to make that comparison, but there isn't a definite correlation that we could find that would actually come up with an actual number of this is the amount of inflow and infiltration.
And how expensive or difficult is it to test for leaks in the lines?
Steve, I'll pass that one to you.
Yes, and sorry, before answering that, I know there was a question on how do those peaks compare to other systems. The provincial municipal wastewater regulation sort of speaks to the fact that if you're more than 2 times your average dry weather flow as your maximum, then they would like to see you start to looking at ways to reduce your inflow and infiltration. So you are marginally above that 2 times, but there are communities that are significantly above 2 times that have a lot of work to do. So when it comes to how do you find the leak, an excellent question. It all depends on what the source of it is. So if you see really high peaks that occur really quickly after rain events, then oftentimes that's from a cross connection. And cross connections are most often best found through smoke testing. So that's where there's people's roof leaders, for example, connected to the drain. When we see longer response items that take longer to connect or for the response to show up, then those can be due to foundation drains being connected. Those you obviously can't smoke test because there's no smoke to go out of the ground, or they're due to cracked services or cracked pipes. And so those are actually the hardest ones to find because there's not an easy way to see if someone's gone and had a soggy backyard and decided, you know what, I don't know what to do with this, so I'm just going to connect it to my sewer. And that typically is where that occurs, is where people have got poor drainage. The easiest way to fix your drainage is to connect your building foundation drain to your sewer. And so that can be a place that it shows up. And then, you know, cracked pipes or things that get damaged obviously become an obvious way for water to get into the system. So those are best found by video inspection. And so they are quite a bit harder to find and can be more expensive to find as well. I don't know, Patrick, if you want to add anything to that question.
I guess I would add that, you know, we do have, you know, among all the things that our utilities field staff have to do, that they try to find the time to, during heavy rains, when there's been prolonged heavy rains, to go and investigate and see where they can see water flowing into, you know, a manhole that's could be addressed. And so we have identified a few where we feel that it's worth the effort to rehabilitate the manhole and improve, that is, reduce the inflow and infiltration. We're just in the process of getting some pricing around that, and hopefully can proceed with that very soon. So that's the other way, is just boots on the ground. Just go out and similar to the water systems and trying to find leaks in the water systems.
So my other question has to do with the sort of collection pipes that are in the ground. So for example, the one that was put in when the first sewer district system was done back in 1989 that runs down behind all the buildings on Trunk Road. If that's a poly pipe or something, I did have apparently, according to the 93 long range plan, it's 200 diameter and 150 diameter pipes, but it doesn't say what kind they are. So poly, that's the outflow. What's the estimated useful life of those pipes? I mean, if they're cracked or leaking, do they need to be replaced anyhow? Because of, they don't last forever. So I'm just wondering if some of the older systems.
Yeah, most of the system is newer than what you would expect the service life of an underground pipe to be.
Well, I'm thinking of the one that was put in 89, which is stripped for the original sewer system. So I don't know, what's that, 40 years?
40 years. Well-constructed pipe should last longer than that.
Okay. All right. And I guess the other is, if I'm reading this right, you're wanting us to give you $2 million in total. I think it's $460 for the design and $1,640 for these phase 1 work. So that's $2 million in total.
21.
Yeah. So yeah, that
2.1. Yeah, 2.1 million. Okay. And so we really don't have a feel for how much is infiltration. And in the phase 2 planning, we haven't, in the number crunching of the estimated going forward, what number's been used for the percentage for infiltration. Like we've calculated, the flow based on estimated population density or equivalent population. So is there then a percentage added on for infiltration?
Yes, it's based on area. So as more areas added, then the infiltration coming in is based on the area. That's a standard infiltration calculation. However, we did assume that the newer sewers would have a lower infiltration rate, and so the design peaking factor going out into the future is slightly lower.
And I guess sort of the last question, which now just went right out of my head. I'll have to come back. It'll come back to me. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Allison, and thank you, Mary, for your input. Over to Sue Ellen.
Thank you, Mayor Andrew, and thank you, Director of Engineering. I think this is important, and our guests to have accurate info, which we've been lacking. And I'm happy to have it, although it's painful. I think we need to look at it because we need a clean environment, and we need to think about our permits and all those good things. My question is, and I won't go on. My question is, I haven't seen a mention of climate change, and I'm not bringing that up to make any particular point, except we've been looking, I heard the words historical peaking, and when I looked through the urban systems report, I didn't see any mention of the more intense rainfall that's washed out some culverts, and maybe that had to do with climate change already, but projections into the future suggest that there might be more of those extreme weather events. Would those be suitable to be included in the calculations? Oops, thank you.
So you're talking about assuming that we're going to have higher peaking factor in the future. I mean, that's a good question. I think it may. I don't. I think our efforts at I&I reduction would work in the other direction, reducing the peaking factor, and the climate itself may work against us. I don't know if our urban systems folks have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, Mary.
Yeah, I can speak to that. I mean, that's definitely a question that many communities are facing. Obviously, knowing how things are going to change in the future is obviously a prediction. Some communities are assuming, yes, they're going to proactively invest in inflow and infiltration reduction in order to offset climate change impacts. Other communities are factoring in increases to inflow and infiltration due to climate change. And I mean, obviously, the smaller your system like Bowen, the more sensitive it is to those assumptions, and definitely something that needs to be considered moving forward. Definitely with phase 2 works is just how you consider staying ahead of infrastructure deterioration and how much you invest in addressing and dealing with sources of inflow and infiltration versus the flows being able to get worse. But a very good question.
Thank you. Because I like that we're going to be looking at. Where's my notes here? Sorry. I know we did smoke testing back in 2015. Maybe there's more kinds of chasing leaks that we can do, but I'm in support of the staff recommendations and the inflow monitoring. I guess that's my second question. Does the inflow monitoring equipment and setup of that inflow monitoring system, is that included in the phase 2 or phase 1?
It was included as part of the phase 1 scope, and it does give you a better picture of what's happening at your facility.
Thank you. That's my questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sue Ellen. And and thanks, Steve, on that one. Michael, over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. And I wonder if I could look at this through the lens of this being an immediate problem. Particularly considering those people who are taking part in this Zoom call with an immediate serious problem on their hands. Hopefully we can, since we're looking at 2022, and at the moment I'm not looking beyond, in 2022, we can hope that the medical center, the community center can continue unimpeded with the arrangements they're anticipating at the moment. So they do not constitute an immediate issue. Vacant lots, while the answer is also probably not exactly perfect, they don't constitute an immediate issue, and at least if they do, probably to a lesser extent. What I believe we're dealing, which is an immediate issue, is somewhere in the region of 17 groups of people who are looking at us tonight, wondering what the future holds for them for very real reasons and reasons that we've listened to. And whilst they will doubtless be interested in all the technical reasons we've been presented with, if you've got a builder ready to go in March, looking at flowcharts may not be your number one point of interest. So I'd like to focus, if we can, on what are we doing for those people who most critically need our help right now. Now, my understanding is, And I realize, Patrick, and I think you put it fairly, that you don't have a precise answer to this, but my understanding is that we need to approve, probably tonight, somewhere in the region of between 1,600,000 and 2 million to get the immediate work underway, with the most earnest hope that, and as soon as Patrick receives verification, will permit these groups of people to proceed with building their homes, and it will help the municipality live up to the obligations that it's now under, owing to the stage of permitting that we've permitted. So I'm wondering if we could set aside, recognizing we must deal with it, phase 2, because we will have to deal with it. So we're merely kicking the can down the hill, and actually tonight focus on getting the first phase approved, get that started, because we need to get back as quickly as almost, I'll say it's a matter of days. It's not a matter of weeks, but we need to get back to these people. And Patrick, if I may ask you, I appreciate you haven't yet received the definitive answer, but if we are to immediately approve phase 1, if phase 1 is to start as soon as humanly possible, then how long do you think you will need to get the answer that these groups of people are looking for, saying that, yes, phase 1 will do the job and we can get you hooked up and you can get your building underway? Because that's the question of tonight. The rest we will have to deal with very soon, but tonight that is what we need to be able to answer. So how long do you think, Patrick, it will be before we can actually get back to these parties and say, yes, we've approved phase 1, yes, phase 1 is starting, and this is what we can do for you as a matter of certainty? Do you need a day, a week, a month? How long do you think it will reasonably take for you to get that answer?
Probably at least a week. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm sorry, because it's, in a way, it's a slightly unfair question, but if it's in the region of a week, and people know that this is what we have done, this is the direction that we are going, and we hope to get back to them, our most earnest hope that we will get back to them in a week, that at least is a tangible go forward that people can say, hey, there's a whole group of people at this municipality who are doing our best to get us and the municipality out of a mutually difficult situation. And then I'm asking, Mayor, I think, is that we set aside the rest of the discussion, phase 2, and I'm delighted that Patrick has got the resources, the technical resources that he has, so that we can move along. Because otherwise, I think this will be yet another breakfast. This has the ability to become a breakfast conversation, and I don't think that's necessary. I think the objectives in front of us are short term, and that's what people are wanting to hear. So with respect, that is what I submit. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Michael. And your points are well taken there. I'm going to go to Rob and then over to Liam, back to Maureen and Amy.
Okay,
Rob?
thanks. I don't know who best to direct this question to. Maybe might be Liam, might be Graham. Patrick, pardon me. But moving forward, we're starting to spend some money here that we don't have. I'd like to know what the general intent is of who's going to be paying for all of this. Is this going to be an island-wide financing, or are we going to contain this within users of the system itself, just from phase 1 and also phase 2? I know there's going to be hookup fees moving forward, but that's obviously not going to cover the bills with these 2 phases. So I'd just like to know what the general direction is that we're moving in on the financing basis.
Liam, do you want to take that one, or Patrick?
I think either way. I can give it a shot, Patrick, and if you can add.
Take a rest.
So Rob, we do have the money for it. It's not money that we don't have, but what we have identified is that it would be coming from non-statutory reserves and from the capital renewal and replacement reserve and unappropriated surplus. And I believe that's in the report. And those are monies that we do have in-house, and I have confirmed that it is available. That's for phase one. For phase two, we haven't finalized the financing strategy, and that is something that I would like to explore further. I've got a conceptual plan of how phase two could be financed, but that involves a deeper and broader discussion with the development community, council, and the finance advisory committee, and others. And on that note, I would like to also bring forward a question tonight to council about the Finance Advisory Committee's involvement on this particular issue, and would like to seek as to whether or not council would like to make a referral for this to be considered by the Finance Advisory Committee. And I spoke with the chair of the committee today, and it's possible to set up a quick meeting potentially this week, which could have a look at it and they could provide their input. And if council were to want to consider it could be a decision that would be made by council later in the week or early the following week by email. So rather than it being pushed to tonight's agenda, that would allow for the Finance Advisory Committee's input on it as well.
So Leah, just because I was asking more of just not exactly where the money was coming from, more of a general question. It sounds like it will be more money coming from what we would usually use island-wide.
Correct. Yeah, so the unappropriated surplus and the capital replacement renewal reserve is funded from general revenue from all taxpayers. And I recognize expressly that is not the preferred solution to financing upgrades for local area service, which sewer is. However, given the urgency of this and the uniqueness of this is not it's not similar to some of our other utility upgrades that we've required. And also because the capacity at the plant was consumed while there was no contributing finances, we've been left with no more capacity and no reserves. And as such, I think that requires the municipality as a whole to finance this to go forward.
Okay, thank you. Rob, is that it?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Back to Maureen.
I think Amy may have been before me.
Okay.
But I can go ahead. I have a specific question, and it has to do with clarifying the difference between short-term growth and near-term growth. Patrick, in the report from Urban Systems, this is a specific question, but it may actually have some importance here. In the report from Urban Systems, page 24, there's a description of the short-term growth and the projects that fall within that. And then there's a list of the near-term growth, which is the 2 to 3 year projection. But there's overlap in the lists. And it appears to me that some of those projects are being double counted. So before we leave this meeting, I really would like to know whether I'm simply misreading the chart or whether there is actual double counting going on here.
Yeah, that's the way it appears, Maureen. I had that same question, and I'll go back to Liam. He can explain that pretty quickly. It was just the way the numbers fell.
Thanks, Mayor and Councillor Nicholson. I just want to confirm because there are two tables. There's the table provided by Patrick, and then there's the urban systems table. And I think where there may be some confusion is that in the urban systems table, it shows for the, are we talking about the first table in Appendix A, expected population growth? Is that what you're?
That's what I'm looking at, yes.
Right. So at the top there, it says Rivendell Heights Phase 1 and 2, 8 units. And then Rivendell, and then in the next box below, it says Rivendell Heights Phase 1 and 2, 12 units. And so effectively there are 20 units that we're counting there. So it's not double counting. It's that there's multiple units.
Divided up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not specifically that. It's the Area 1, Lot 2, where we've got 54 units being counted in both short-term and near-term.
No, near-term is it's cumulative. So the near-term encompasses the short-term as well.
Right. So I guess my question then has to do with what does the Phase 1 improvements deal with? Does it deal with those listed only in the short-term growth, or does it deal with the other items listed in the near term?
It's the short term. And so it's all of the items listed in the urban systems report, which adds up to a population of 79 equivalent.
Right.
While that assessment was going on, we were having the discussions with the medical center. And so I put the question to urban systems about could we Phase 1 also accommodate the 10 people equivalent that this medical center development would bring online. So they did build that into their analysis, that we have the 89 population equivalent that we can accommodate by Phase 1. The attachment that I'd included in the that were included with the report, because the medical center has a septic option. We had talked about, well, let's instead of that, can we add in these properties on Rivendell that have applied for building permits, where septic is a lot more difficult, or in some cases may not be feasible. And so I got a little ahead of myself there in thinking that we could, maybe accommodate these 106, which is a higher number. Put the question to urban systems. Okay, as we've laid out the Phase 1 design, can we accommodate 106? And they've looked at the models and said no. And so that would be our next step is going back to see, well, how could we adjust this design to make sure that we can accommodate that. And I don't have the answer for that right now.
Okay, so the folks who purchased in the Village by the Cove, the Foxglove, in this scenario are looking at not being included in Phase 1. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty significant for some of the folks who are listening.
Yes.
Thank you.
Allison?
I guess my question has to go back a bit to the one that Patrick was answering about timing. Within a week, you will know whether or not all of the Rivendell lots that have applied for building permits but have been denied them, and the Elrond's Court would be, and also the ones on Foxglove, whether they would be able to be accommodated? Or is it just within a week you'll know that the places that are already being built, like will be able to be accommodated. And then in looking at your chart, there's some of the lines are gray hatched and some of them are not. And I'm just not quite sure what the significance of that is.
So phase one, we're definitely looking at the stuff that's in progress or already been built.
And is that the 8 units listed for Rivendell? I'm looking at the 2 population charts. I'm just trying to figure out
11
whether
units. Yeah.
Well, no, it's 8 on this expected growth short term that I'm looking at within 1 year. So I'm assuming those are all.
Should I share my screen here?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Because I think we're looking at different charts.
I was looking at the one in the report from Patrick, from Urban Systems, Appendix A.
Okay, do you see my screen now?
Yeah, can you make it a wee bit bigger?
Yeah.
Quite a bit bigger? There we go. Okay, so some of it's sort of what's gray on my screen, has a pale blue. It's shaded. So what's the significance of the shading is the first question.
It means it's non-residential.
Okay, thank you. Makes sense. Okay, so you've got, and now Maureen's question about, so there's 8 units in phase 1 and 2, and those 8 units are included in the 12 in phase 1 and 2 down below. So is the difference the 4, the people that have applied for the building permits been told they're not going to get them?
This is there. We have to add 10 units on Foxglove into that short-term growth column. Those have been occurring over the past year. And they've already been complete or in progress.
That includes all the duplexes and been built.
So there's a bunch of people building things right now that you're telling me when they're ready to move in, they're not going to be able to get an occupancy permit because they won't be able to connect to the sewer?
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Okay.
So this is why I did the updated summary of expected growth, and maybe I should share that too.
That's better, yeah.
Yeah, that one. Okay, so we have, in addition to what was shown there, we actually have the 5 duplex, a 4-plex that was complete and 3 duplex units that have been completed and one of them's in progress. So those have to be accommodated. Those have happened and are happening.
And those are in addition to the ones that people are already living in?
Those are the ones people are living in.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then, with the area 1 of lot 2, the apartment building there's 17 units there that are, were occupied in December. And so that's coming online. Rivendell, this 11, and this is where I was hopeful that we have 6 that are either built or in progress, under construction. And then there's the 5 that have applied for building permit. And then there's 1 that's vacant. So this is what I had asked Urban Systems if they could, ideally, we would add all of these plus all the vacant lots in Foxglove, Rivendell, and Elrond's Court. And that would bring this number, up to 139. And they've confirmed that as we've proposed, phase 1 can accommodate that. I guess what I'm hopeful is that we can at least get, 106 in our phase 1 upgrades accommodated. Because we haven't, they've proposed the design for 89. So that's less, and we need to work through what could be done to capture at least the permits that have already been submitted. for the
So
application.
if I can just paraphrase very quickly, to be absolutely clear, everything that is already approved and is under construction or completed is in. That is
In phase one,
yeah,
but not
yes.
in at the extent that they could hook up tomorrow and not.
Yes.
hold the capacity.
That's right. And so what we're trying hard to do is to make sure at the very least, the 5 applicants, the 5 building applications that we received more recently can also be accommodated. And ideally that all the vacant lots in the Rivendell area, as well as Village by the Cove, can also be accommodated. That's the priority. So we're trying to accommodate, the very first priority is those 5 applications that we're in, and then immediately following is all the vacant lots. And we know that we have the ability for both the health center and the community center to shift to septic. And so that's why we're encouraging and supporting that, because that frees up additional capacity for any of these lots, any of these property owners.
So when are we going to have the answer to the question? Because, you know,
As soon as possible.
Yeah, but one of the speakers tonight has got a window of opportunity in the nesting season, and they either have to blast, you know, within a week or 10 days, or.
Trust me, Councillor Morris, we are going as quickly as we can. This is not something that we're taking lightly at all. And we've been engaging with Urban Systems, and Mary and Steve and the team are very responsive, and we're okay. This is top of mind for everybody here.
Okay, so I guess another, just something to throw out, when I was going back through history, originally there was a proposal which didn't get put into the plan to actually put the septic field for that upper area, Elrond's Court and Rivendell and everything, under the park below Tiernanog. Is that an option so that that community group could all share the cost of that septic field? Common septic field amongst them?
We've not explored that. That has not been put on the table. That's not an idea that we were aware of.
Have to pump it up all over the hill too.
You'd have, yeah, install the pipe and lift station and the lakes. And, yeah.
Well, some of them are at that level. Some of them would need a lift station, I guess.
I think all the ones that are all the new houses on Rivendell right at the top, barring one, are already on the system.
On the system and connected.
Yeah, those houses. There's 5 lots at the very when you're driving up and you get to the top of right by Tiernanog, and there's 4 that are, I believe there's 4 that are already constructed and connected.
As are some of the Foxglove ones.
Correct.
Yeah.
So in a way, we're only dealing with ones that where construction hasn't been finished and people haven't moved in.
They're not, but they're
No,
in the original phase 1 count.
Yeah, they're included in this phase 1 count. It's the additional 5 that have not started.
And then I guess my other issues just has to be is just where the money's all going to come from, and you know, just how much is in unappropriated surplus, and you know, given you know, how much work has been done on phase 1 already? Have we incurred any costs with respect to phase 1 already?
No.
Yes, there was the pre-design work that was done in 2021, which just relates to the whole picture.
And that's not in what you're wanting us to approve tonight.
No.
No, and we've started detailed design for phase 1, so that's underway. That would be included. That portion would be included.
And where did we fund what was done in 2021 from?
Capital renewal
and replacement reserve.
I'm just reluctant to make a decision tonight, even knowing, just because we've taken in so much information and we need to comprehended and for other reasons on financing that, so.
Okay, thank you, Allison. Listen, I'm gonna move on. I'd like to go to some of the, I see Karis has got her hand up there. And I'd like to give the opportunity for some of the people involved here to have a say. Karis, go ahead, or Robby.
All right, just getting my video queued up here. Anyways, that might not work, but yeah, thank you guys. Everybody has, this is a great conversation, lots of support from everybody here. I really appreciate that. I've boiled it down. It seems like there's three main points here that I've observed. One is obviously the upgrade of the plant, the funding that goes on with that. Number two would be, obviously the contravening of your guys' permit to discharge. That's basically the biggest point to take away. And then the third would be like the contravening of the development connection fees and the property connection fees that have already been paid. So, we've got the upgrade of the plant. That's a long-term thing, so I don't want to talk about that. The violating of the permit to discharge, and then basically the violating of neglecting these connection fees. And it kind of comes back to one of Allison's original questions, which she didn't get into. Council is provided with information from somebody, when it comes to deciding whether a development is approved to go ahead. So somebody is basically responsible for looking into, sewerage capacity when it comes to approving the development of properties and the installation of the infrastructure to connect to the sewer that goes along with that. And I was just wondering how council and staff came to the decision that the violating of these properties connection fees was more important than violating their permit to discharge. Because if we connected to the sewer, the onus really falls on, the person that has been responsible for approving the sewerage of these development permits. And the onus should not fall on, the people that have bought these properties.
Is that it, Robby?
I wanted to add that, we're coming into the dry season, and, if permits were accepted, knowing that we're going ahead with phase one of this plan, we're looking at these properties not being occupied until Christmas. That gives us time to enter this phase one, which I'm sure you guys are going to do. And so, there'll be no influx from these houses for at least until Christmas time. That would give property owners the ability to move forward immediately with the construction of these houses with the approval of connection to sewer.
That's exactly what we have in mind for the majority of the operation here. I don't want to cut you off, but I am very cognizant of the time, and we got to leave some time at the end here for council to deal with this. So I see Amy, and who else is up there? Marcel is in there, and Mike. And if you could say what you need to say and try to keep it short so we can finish this up tonight. Amy.
Perfect. Thank you. So it hasn't really been touched on the fact that this situation is not only affecting the permits that are in for application right now or future development. It affects every single house, to my understanding, on that cove system right now, right? So even if you were able to build a suite or you wanted to add, a shower or a toilet for a guest room, nobody is allowed to add to the system load right now. Is that correct, Mr. Graham?
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. So, I think for the community, from what I've heard from the feedback is, people are frustrated that there's nothing that we can do right now, right? Physically to do but that's not the case. So I wanted to put a call out to everyone that's on that sewer system right now. For a minimal cost for every homeowner, maybe you can consider going with a low flush toilet and replacing your toilet. They're not that much, and perhaps replacing your shower fixtures to be low flow that way. And I wonder, would that make us at least a little bit of a difference moving forward to start helping with this, the whole system just being overloaded? Like, at least it's something that people can do right now to start helping their community members, right? Do you think that's feasible?
Yeah, I think we're proceeding on multiple fronts here. I think we need to get the phase 1 upgrades constructed as soon as possible. We're focused on that. We're focused on reducing infiltration and inflow wherever we can. We're also focused on trying to optimize the operation of the existing plant. Like, is there a way that we can, in terms of timing the pumps or operating them, is there a way we could get more flow through that system safely? And then demand management is the other one. Yes, I mean, low flow fixtures, education around that can help. In terms of demand management, the biggest, the most effective strategy is revising the water rates, so that currently the Cove Bay water system, you pay a flat rate for a certain amount, and you go above that, and you pay based on the volume, and it's actually less. Like, it's a regressive rate structure, so you pay less for your overconsumption than your base rate. So I mean, that would be the biggest sort of low-hanging fruit I would see on the demand management front. That is also priority, that we want to try and get people using less water, discharging less. So really, all of those things are important, and they all need to move forward quickly. We recognize that.
Awesome. Well, I just want to say thank you so much, Mr. Graham. Your presentation was fantastic, and I know it helped a lot of people understand what's going on. So thank you for the time and effort. It's evident.
And thank you, Amy, and your points are well taken. Every little bit is going to help here. There's no question. Marcel, go to you.
Yeah, thank you. I just have one question. Is Elrond Court included in phase 1 or not included in phase 1?
Not.
Where are you at on it?
919 Elrond Court. So we bought land and we want to start building this year, but we didn't apply for a building permit yet. But we are busy with architects.
Not currently, unfortunately. So the vacant lots, if they would be the next priority. If there's any way we can accommodate those in phase 1, then we would, and that would be the Elrond's Court, the remaining lots on Foxglove, and there's one on Rivendell as well, but not currently.
Yeah, it's sad. We just bought it in October, and of course these lots have been developed like 10-20 years ago. But okay, thank you for clearing this up.
Sorry about that, Marcel, at this point. Mike?
I would like to echo other people who have thanked the council for hearing us. I think there really is a spirit of wanting to help in a rather unfortunate, for some of us, disastrous circumstance. So I appreciate that greatly. It's a little bit surprising to me in a meeting that was addressing the proposed amendment to the bylaws, that we haven't really talked about the bylaws and what that means. And it seems to me, I'm just guessing, reading between the lines, that somebody discovered late, unfortunately late, that the toilet is backed up. And at some level, it really doesn't matter if there are 5 people in line hoping to use the toilet, or 100 people in line wanting to use the toilet, if 10 people have been promised that they can use the toilet, or 20, at some level that doesn't matter. And I appreciate that discussion. And I think we learned a lot about that tonight. I think there is another ethical and even moral discussion. And I think council members have, approached appreciating this, but there's another level. I think you were, warned a month ago that probably by council, that because of this situation, staff would like to stop approving building permits. And yet probably somebody warned staff that, in fact, the bylaws don't allow you to do that. And so we're going to ask council to propose an amendment to the bylaws that allow you to do that. And they get read once, twice, 3 times. I may be misunderstanding this, but I still think besides that scientific toilet illustration, there is another ethical illustration of, is it actually okay, ethically, morally, to say, you were fishing in Deep Bay in November, we're going to suggest a law that prohibits that in January, maybe pass it in February, and then fine you for doing it. I do think there's an ethical situation and a moral situation that I would like you to answer. Why are you proposing these suggestions? Amendment. Nobody on this committee just wants more words in the bylaws. I'm guessing that you want more words in the bylaws to protect you legally. Why are they there? What is the ethical and moral part of this?
Thank you, Mike. And I'm going to send you over to Liam, which we've had a discussion about this, but go ahead, Liam.
Thank you for the question. It's very valid, and I appreciate your frustration. And I do want to also just say I appreciate the gravity of this situation. It is immense, and I can't actually imagine how frustrated I would feel if I was in the position of some of the homeowners and property owners that are in today. So I am impressed by the respectful and insightful dialogue from everyone tonight. I appreciate that very much so. And to your question, Mr. Milway, the authority does exist in our current bylaws to reject the issuance of an occupancy permit or a building permit. It's just not very well structured. And as Bowen matures, we're looking at our bylaws, at how they've been written, and how you follow from one place of authority to another place of authority, in one bylaw to another. And in looking at our authority to do what we're doing, we realize that we need to make it cleaner, crisper, simpler, clearer. And that's the effect of the proposed amendments to the bylaws. We're not, because the way you describe it sounds awful and disingenuous, but I can assure you that that's not the intent, and that we are in fact operating within the jurisdictional authority that we currently have, but we're trying to make it cleaner and crisper in doing so. And we're not at all trying to be disingenuous to give ourselves authority to do something that we're doing retroactively. I hope that provides some clarity.
Thank you for your answer.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate what you're saying, and I think we're gonna move ahead here because we're pretty much out of time. I'd like to deal with council and how we're going to go forward with this. Obviously the best option would be to go with phase 1 and do whatever we can do there as quickly as we can. And while we're doing that, also find out through Patrick and the people at Urban Systems whether we can squeeze some more on, and we will. And if we can possibly do that, we will be. There's absolutely no question to it. We understand the urgency 100%, and we are very sympathetic, but we do have constraints around us, and we will try to do the best we can, and that's all we can do. And that's about where we're at for the time being. Sue Ellen, quickly.
I would like to move the motions.
Okay, but there's a discussion about whether the Finance Advisory Committee would like to have a look at these. I just don't know how everybody feels about that. It might take a couple more days to get some input back from the Finance Committee, and then we can do it by email if we want to do that. But go ahead, Sue Ellen.
Well, I'm interested in just taking the advice of our qualified and experienced staff and moving straight ahead with the motions that are in front of us and not. So I'm going to move that council direct staff to include in the 2022 municipal capital budget. I'm reading the first recommendation.
We're in a CoW, Sue Ellen.
Oh.
So that the committee of the whole recommend that council.
Recommend to council direct staff to include 2022 municipal capital budget in that, 1,640,000 for construction of the phase 1 Snug Cove Wastewater Treatment Plant upgrades and 460,000 for the design of the phase 2 wastewater treatment plant upgrades. And I can just keep going. 2, that the committee of the whole recommend to council that they authorize staff to use 919,382 from accumulated surplus, 750,800 from non-statutory reserves, and 168,600 from unappropriated surplus, and 720,618 from capital renewals and replacement fund towards the 1,640,000 phase 1 costs. 3, that the committee of the whole directs recommend to council to direct staff to proceed with negotiations with Metro Vancouver regarding acquisition of the area of Crippen Park that is required for the phase 2 wastewater treatment plant upgrades.
And I'll second that.
Okay, thank you, David. Okay, further discussion. We got Rob first, then Maureen.
Yeah, just a question to staff. What parts do we need to pass tonight so we can get going, and what parts can we hold back on that we can go to the Finance Advisory Committee on?
Well, it should all go to the Finance Committee if we're going to send it there.
Well, I know I'm hoping to hear back from them, so I'm reluctant to pass everything right now without any input from the Finance Advisory Committee. So I'm wondering, like, what would be holding us up for you guys to start going tomorrow on getting some of these plans going, and what can we hold off for a week or 2 weeks or whatever needed to go to the Finance Advisory Committee?
Well, if we can't do it both ways. We can't approve this and then go to the Finance Committee. Maureen?
I actually was having similar questions to Rob.
Okay. Go ahead.
And I'm not sure his point was answered.
I haven't gotten an answer on that. Yeah.
Yeah. So if we were not to make a decision tonight and to refer to the Finance Advisory Committee while Patrick and Urban Systems are carrying on with their investigative work, I mean, what is the harm? And I'm not saying that facetiously. What is the harm? Liam?
Yeah.
Well, I think, that's a really good question. And I think that it's entirely possible for Patrick to continue working with Urban Systems to explore the possibility of increasing design capacity to accommodate some of the real high pressure items. That might change the cost. So actually delaying at this point may be beneficial, because it may be that the costs do change slightly. And getting the Finance Advisory Committee's input is always beneficial. It's never a bad thing. And right now too, there is a little bit of issue in the recommendation as it's written, as it was read, because it does, in item number 1, it does identify 460,000 for design of phase 2, but it doesn't specify where that money was coming from. And so that money for design of phase 2 would also have to come from the same places, probably from the capital renewal and replacement fund. If council were to refer this to the Finance Advisory Committee, staff would continue to explore with Urban Systems the possibilities of increasing capacity, while the Finance Advisory Committee could be looking at it and providing their input. And then we could be circling back with council as soon as possible with either an email voting process or bringing council back for a special purpose meeting.
Okay, thank you, Liam.
And just one more point with the acquisition of the area of Crippen Park that might be required for the for potential expansion. In discussion with Liam, he indicated that I had with Liam, he indicated that the area that you were considering was in the neighborhood of 100 square meters, right? So
Correct.
it's like a third of the size of a detached secondary suite. So we're not looking for a gigantic chunk of Crippen Park. It's a little bit of Crippen Park, and I think that's important that the public understand that. Just
yeah, and we did
square meters.
Yeah, it is very small. Yeah.
So I wondered if we could say, if we could add to the resolution when we actually vote on it, just the up to X number of square meters, just for clarity. Negotiation would follow, but I think I would feel more comfortable with that addition.
Okay, when we get to that, Allison. Thank you, Maureen. Allison?
Thought I'd unmuted myself. The motion was seconded, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I'm really not comfortable with the amount of money that's coming out of the unappropriated surplus amount.
Okay.
There was 4.3 million in there in our 2020 financial statements. I know some of that has been spent on the basis of, what's work that's been done on the community center and work that's been done on the fire hall. I also know we've committed over $1 million of that to the community center. And now you want to take another $1 million out. That's our fund that provides our working capital. And then there's other possible commitments on that. And then we haven't explored the impact to the capital replacement and renewal fund and what capital projects would get deferred. So we're making a very a decision without necessarily all the information on the financial impacts to the municipality as a whole. I totally sympathize with the issue that the people that can't get their building permits, and I'm still trying to get my head around the infiltration issues and just how much capacity is really there. So I can't support voting for this motion right now. I would like to defer it to a subsequent date. And I'm quite happy to make a motion to defer.
Would you be happy to send it out to the FAC?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Michael?
Yes, I wanted just to move this on, whether the proposers of the motion could agree that the first thing we want to get tabled is for Patrick to move ahead with his work, however you want to do that. And then secondly, it seems general consensus that yes, we will involve the Finance Advisory Committee, which seems infinitely sensible, and we will have a decision back from them, which we could circulate by email to be completed by the end of this week. So that doesn't dribble on into cyberspace. So there's a definite commitment to moving that along. And as for Maureen's point, by all means, and I'm sorry, Maureen, if I've lost just where that goes in this, but I think tonight, if we could agree that Patrick moves ahead, we will involve the Finance Advisory Committee, and if some way we can incorporate the points you made, please, let's do it. But then to draw this meeting to a close, and then so everybody watching knows where we stand, that I think means at the end of this week, we really have moved the needle. So that's how I'd suggest.
Okay.
I seconded the motion, and I'm happy to agree with Michael's direction that we complete this review with the Finance Advisory Committee before the end of the week and hear back.
Thank you.
Is this before we vote on this or after we vote on this?
No, that we defer voting until we've heard from the Finance Advisory Committee, but we do that as quickly as possible, and that Patrick continues with the work he's doing, as we discussed with the with urban systems, to see what we can do to slightly increase, so that we're helping all those folks that are speaking tonight.
Yes, thank you, David. That's sort of the way I'm leaning on this. So, Sue Ellen, are you willing to amend that to send it out to the FAC first?
Well, Mr. Mayor, I don't like to. We've got advice from staff in front of us, and we know the work needs to be done. I think the Financial Advisory Committee, I don't know who's on that, but certainly only a couple of members of council are on that. And I'm not one of them. So I'm not sure what the value is. I suppose a few more days, but I'm just wondering what, well, Liam has said that it's always helpful. I saw Patrick with his hand up there, and I don't know what the wording would be exactly. I hope Hope is working on that to defer these motions until the end of the
Councillor
week.
Fast, if you withdraw your moving of that motion, we can just leave it at that, and then we can move a new motion that council refer the Snug Cove Wastewater Treatment Plant upgrades, update, and next steps report dated January 21st, 2022 to the Finance Advisory Committee for review, recommendation, and report back to council as soon as possible.
Yeah, but as soon as possible is another one of these words. I don't.
We could include a date.
Liam has indicated that they're prepared to meet tomorrow. I think, Liam, is that what you said? Or at a very short notice?
Oh, yeah, I can't speak on behalf of all members, but the chair did identify that they could meet rapidly.
Yes, as one of those members, I certainly would confirm that. And then we could say by the end of this week that we would have this decision made.
Or before.
The recommendations to council by the end of the week?
Yes.
Yeah, or before.
Yeah.
Or before?
As soon as possible.
But
okay. I'm hearing consensus among council, and I want to help things move along, and I withdraw.
Okay, thank you, Sue Ellen. And Hope, could you read that revised recommendation from the Committee of the Whole?
So the council refer, or that the Committee of the Whole recommend that council refer the Snug Cove Wastewater Treatment Plant upgrades, update and next steps report dated January 21st, 2022 to the FAC for review, recommendation, and report back to council as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you. I'll move that. Second.
Second.
Okay, I got Rob over here. And any further discussion? Allison, I see your hand up.
Oh, I was gonna, so Hope solved it.
Okay, thank you. If there's no further discussion, I'll ask a question. All in favor? Aye. All right, so, and that brings to a close. There's a question period in here, and I'm afraid that we're gonna.
I think we've done it, haven't we?
Do we need a resolution for Patrick to continue his work? Do we need that as well, or is that, can we take that as given?
I think he's going to do that anyway. Patrick says no, he doesn't.
Yeah, it's a given. It's a given.
Yeah. Okay. So unfortunately, we've run out of time. We're already into our council meeting. So I'm going to declare this, and I apologize if anybody in the public realm had some questions. You can send them in, I guess, via email to BIMBC and Mayor and Council. I'm sorry that we couldn't get to them tonight, and we'll adjourn this now, and we will reconvene in 5 minutes, if that's okay for everybody, for the council meeting. And it's going to be on this this page, Hope.
There is a separate Zoom link.
Okay, I'll get it. Okay, and I also want to thank all the people that came in from the public. I certainly understand what a mess this is, and we're doing our best. It'll just be a step by step and plodding along, and we're going to get this fixed up as soon as we can. It is definitely our #1 priority, and you can see how resolved council is and staff to make this better. So thank you very much for your attendance, and good night. And also thank you for the people from Steve and Mary for their contributions here. Thank you very much for that. And on that note, we'll leave you for 5 minutes.